Before I reached these towns, I didn't expect much. I thought abandoned places were lifeless and empty, but standing there, alone, I felt something deeper. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, filled with memories and quiet warnings. Locals didn't talk about legends or fear. They spoke about danger, loss, and respect. These towns don't scream their stories. They let you feel them, slowly, the moment you step inside. If you felt the stories behind these places, please like this video and subscribe to Traveling Guide Hub to explore more real and forgotten locations together. 1. Indianola, Texas. I still remember the first time I ever set foot in Indianola, Texas. The moment I stepped onto the cracked roads, I felt a strange mix of excitement and unease. It wasn't just an empty town. It was like walking into a history that had been frozen in time. The wind swept through the skeletal remains of old buildings, whispering stories of lives once lived here. I could almost hear the faint echoes of children playing or the clatter of horses on the cobblestones. Locals had warned me before I arrived. "Don't wander too far," they said. "The storms that hit here have left some places dangerous." At first, I didn't take it seriously. I thought, how bad could it be? But as I walked past what remained of the old city hall and the deserted houses, I understood. The hurricane that destroyed Indianola in the late 1800s wasn't just a story. It was visible in every ruined wall, every splintered door. Some buildings leaned at impossible angles, and the foundations were weak, like they could crumble under a single misstep. I remember pausing near an old, weathered church. Its bell tower had collapsed years ago, but the structure still stood, stubbornly refusing to fall completely. I felt a sudden chill and realized I was alone, miles from the nearest town, surrounded only by ghosts of the past. Not ghosts in the supernatural sense, but real ghosts of memories, of families who once laughed, cried, and dreamed in this place. I imagined a mother running to fetch her children, a shopkeeper opening his store, people cheering at town gatherings. All of it now silent, swallowed by time and nature. The locals' warnings about safety made sense too. While exploring the main street, I had to step carefully over broken bricks and rusted nails. Each step made me more aware of how easily history could harm you if you weren't careful. Despite the danger, there was an odd beauty in it. I could feel the resilience of the people who once lived there and the harsh power of nature that had taken it all away. By the time I left Indianola, I felt different. It was haunting, but inspiring. There was sadness, yes, but also a strange respect for the lives that had been lived and lost here. Walking away, I realized that abandoned towns like this are not just empty, they are reminders of human endurance and nature's unforgiving strength. 2. Terlingua, Texas. I arrived in Terlingua, Texas on a scorching afternoon, the sun beating down so hard that it felt like it was trying to press the life out of the land itself. As soon as I stepped out of my car, I was struck by the silence. Not the peaceful silence you find in nature, but a heavy, almost eerie stillness, as if the town was holding its breath. The buildings were cracked and weathered, many abandoned entirely, their windows like hollow eyes staring back at me. The locals had warned me before I came, "Watch out for the heat and don't wander too far alone," they said. At first, I thought it was just caution about the desert, but Terlingua was different. Walking through the old mining town, I could feel the stories of those who had come here chasing dreams that the harsh desert had stolen. The old mercantile, now barely standing, whispered tales of miners and their families, of laughter and arguments, of hope and despair. I wandered toward a row of crumbling adobe houses. My footsteps kicked up clouds of dust, and I imagined children running through these streets, their shouts echoing off the surrounding hills. I could almost hear the distant clang of pickaxes, the toil of a town built on promise and hard work. But now, the only sounds were the wind whistling through broken roofs and the occasional rattle of loose boards. At one point, I climbed a small hill overlooking the town. The entire place stretched out like a frozen memory, and I felt a pang of loneliness. Not just my own, but of all those who had left, chasing survival, leaving this once thriving town behind. The sun began to dip, casting long shadows that made the ruins look even more haunting. Despite the heat and danger, I felt a strange connection, like I was walking alongside the ghosts of miners, hearing their silent struggles. By the time I left Terlingua, the desert's intensity had left its mark on me. There was sadness, yes, but also awe at the perseverance of people who had lived here, enduring unbearable conditions to make a life. Terlingua wasn't just abandoned, it was a testament to human grit, a place where nature's harshness and human ambition collided, leaving behind stories that still linger in the wind. 3. Thurber, Texas. The first time I stepped into Thurber, Texas, I felt like I had walked into a town frozen in time. The streets were empty, lined with old brick buildings that had once buzzed with miners and families. The air smelled faintly of dust and rust, a reminder that this place had been abandoned long ago, yet its past lingered like a shadow refusing to fade. The locals had warned me before I came. "Be careful walking inside the old mines," they warned. "Some structures are unstable." At first, I laughed it off. I didn't expect that just a few steps in, I would feel the weight of history pressing down on me. The coal mines had shaped this town, creating wealth for a time, but the boom had long gone. Walking past the old company store, I could almost hear the chatter of miners buying supplies, their laughter mingling with the clinking of tools. I wandered toward the old railroad tracks, imagining the trains that had once rumbled through, carrying coal and dreams alike. A shiver ran down my spine as I noticed the abandoned houses along the main street. Their windows stared blankly, like silent witnesses to a bustling town that had vanished almost overnight. I could picture children running between homes, dogs barking, neighbors calling greetings, all now replaced by an eerie silence that seemed almost alive. At one corner, a half-collapsed brick chimney caught my eye. I stood there for a while, imagining the families huddled near fires during cold winters, sharing stories and meals. There was a strange intimacy in this emptiness, a connection to people who lived, struggled, and dreamed in the same streets where I now walked alone. The wind blew through broken windows, carrying with it the echoes of the past. By sunset, Thurber looked even more haunting. The shadows stretched long across the cracked pavement, turning every building into a looming silhouette. I felt a mix of awe and melancholy. This was not just an abandoned town, it was a monument to human effort, ambition, and the impermanence of fortune. I left feeling humbled, as if Thurber had silently shared its story with me, a lesson in how quickly life can change and how history quietly waits for those willing to listen. 4. Glen Rio, Texas. I remember the first time I drove into Glen Rio, Texas. The moment I crossed the border from New Mexico, I felt an eerie stillness settle over the town. The streets were empty, gas stations and motels stood like forgotten monuments to a past that had slipped away. It was hard to believe that just a few decades ago, this place had been alive with travelers, families, and the hum of Route 66. Locals had warned me before I came. "Don't expect much," they said. "Most buildings are unsafe, and there's almost no one left." At first, I thought it was an exaggeration, but the town quickly proved them right. I walked past abandoned diners with shattered windows and faded signs. The smell of old grease and dust lingered in the air, and I could almost picture people sitting at the counters, laughing and talking, waiting for the next traveler to arrive. As I explored further, I noticed the cracked pavement of the main street, weeds growing through the concrete. The houses, though small, seemed proud of the families that once lived there, even as the paint peeled and roofs sagged. I could imagine children running barefoot down the streets, dogs chasing them, neighbors waving hello. Now all I heard was the wind whistling through empty rooms and the occasional rattle of loose boards. At one point, I climbed a small hill at the edge of town to look down over Glen Rio. From that height, the town looked like a ghostly shadow of itself. The sun was beginning to set, casting long, haunting shadows over the motels and gas stations. I felt a pang of loneliness, not my own, but of the town itself. It had been abandoned not by accident, but because Route 66 had been bypassed, leaving Glen Rio forgotten and slowly crumbling under time and neglect. Walking back toward my car, I realized how fragile human settlements are. Glen Rio was not dangerous because of anything supernatural, but because of the slow erosion of opportunity and attention. The buildings were falling apart, and nature was reclaiming the land. Yet, despite its emptiness, there was beauty here. Stories of travelers, laughter, and dreams that had once filled the streets. Glen Rio was a reminder that even abandoned towns have life, if only we take the time to listen and imagine. 5. Lobo, Texas. The first time I reached Lobo, Texas, I felt like I had driven to the edge of the world. The sun was blazing overhead, and the desert stretched endlessly in all directions. The town itself was almost invisible at first glance, just a few dusty streets lined with crumbling buildings, a handful of old houses, and the remnants of what once had been a lively railroad community. Before I arrived, the locals had warned me. "Be careful if you explore the old structures," they said. "Some buildings have been abandoned for decades, and the ground can be unstable." I didn't fully understand their caution until I stepped onto the main street. The wooden sidewalks creaked under my weight, and the walls of old stores leaned slightly, like they were holding on for dear life. Walking past the remnants of the old railroad depot, I could almost hear the sound of trains arriving, the whistle echoing across the desert. I imagined families rushing to greet travelers, shopkeepers opening doors with a smile, and children laughing as they ran through the streets. Now, all I heard was the wind rattling a loose shutter, or the occasional rattle of loose boards across the empty town. I wandered toward a cluster of abandoned houses, their paint long gone, windows shattered or boarded up. Stepping inside one, I felt a mix of awe and unease. The floorboards groaned under my feet, and I could almost sense the people who lived here: miners, railroad workers, and their families. Their lives, once full of hope and routine, had slowly slipped away as the town died, leaving only memories carved into these decaying walls. As the sun began to set, Lobo took on an even eerier feel. Shadows stretched long over the streets, making every building seem taller, every empty lot deeper. I stood in the middle of town, feeling a strange connection to the people who had been here before me. Lobo wasn't just abandoned, it was a reminder of how fragile human settlements can be and how quickly life can move on when circumstances change. Leaving the town, I felt humbled. Despite the desolation, there was something inspiring about Lobo, the resilience of those who had lived here and the story the town still told decades later. It was a place frozen in time where the past lingered in every broken wall and every whisper of the wind.
6. Helena, Texas. The road to Helena, Texas felt strangely quiet even before I reached the town. As I parked my car and stepped out, I noticed how empty everything felt. There were old buildings standing on both sides of the road, worn down by time, but still holding their shape, like they were refusing to disappear completely. The air was still, and for a moment, I felt like I had walked into a place that the world had forgotten. Helena was once a busy town, and locals had told me that clearly before I came. "This place used to be alive," one man said. "Now it's just memories." Walking through the remains of the town, I could see what he meant. The old jail stood silently, its walls cracked but strong, as if it had seen everything and survived it all. Nearby, the courthouse ruins reminded me that this town once had order, voices, and daily life. As I walked slowly, I imagined the past forming around me. I pictured horses tied outside shops, people talking loudly in the streets, and children running without fear. That imagination faded quickly when I stepped closer to one of the abandoned buildings. The wooden floor looked weak, and the smell of damp dust filled the air. That's when the local warnings made sense. This place isn't dangerous because of stories or myths, but because time has weakened everything here. Standing alone in the center of Helena, I felt a strange sadness, not fear, but respect. This town didn't collapse overnight. It slowly lost its importance when nearby towns grew and businesses moved away. People didn't want to leave, but survival forced them to. You can feel that struggle in the silence, in the empty doorways, and in the walls that still stand without purpose. As the sun lowered, the shadows stretched across the broken streets. I stood there quietly, letting the moments sink in. Helena felt honest. It wasn't trying to scare anyone. It was simply showing what happens when time moves on and leaves places behind. When I finally walked back to my car, I felt heavier inside. Helena isn't just abandoned land. It's a reminder of human effort, loss, and how easily life can change. And once you visit, that feeling stays with you long after you leave. 7. Shafter, Texas. Reaching Shafter, Texas felt like stepping into a quiet pause in time. The drive itself was long and lonely, and by the time I arrived, the desert heat had already drained most of my energy. As I stood there, looking at the scattered remains of the town, I felt a strange calm mixed with unease. There were only a few buildings left, spaced far apart, as if even the town had slowly tried to pull itself together before giving up. Locals had warned me earlier. "There's nothing dramatic out there," one of them said, "just emptiness, heat, and old memories." They were right. Shafter was once a silver mining town, full of workers and families who believed the mines would last forever. Walking past the old mining structures, I could imagine men covered in dust, tired but hopeful, returning home after long shifts underground. That hope is what built this place, and its loss is what emptied it. I walked carefully around the remains of the old buildings. The walls were cracked, and some roofs had collapsed completely. Every step reminded me how fragile these structures had become. This is why locals warn visitors not to explore carelessly. It's not fear that keeps people away, but the risk of falling debris and extreme desert conditions. There is no help nearby if something goes wrong. As I stood there, the silence became overwhelming. No cars, no voices, no movement, just the wind moving sand across the ground. I felt small, like I was intruding on something deeply personal. This wasn't just abandoned land, it was the result of people leaving, not because they wanted to, but because the town could no longer support them. The sun began to lower, painting the desert in soft orange light. For a moment, Shafter looked almost peaceful. I felt a quiet respect for the people who had once lived here, built homes, raised families, and worked the mines with their bare hands. Their lives didn't disappear, they simply moved on, leaving behind this silent reminder. When I finally turned back, I felt emotionally tired, but grateful. Shafter taught me that abandonment doesn't always come with chaos. Sometimes it arrives slowly, quietly, and leaves behind a place that still holds the weight of human effort and forgotten dreams. 8. Old Bluffton, Texas. Getting to Old Bluffton, Texas felt different from the other abandoned places I had visited. This town wasn't destroyed by mines or railroads. It was slowly drowned by time and water. As I stood near the edge of the lake, the first thing I noticed was the silence, broken only by the sound of wind moving across the water. It felt calm, but also deeply unsettling. Before coming here, locals had warned me quietly. "Most of the town is gone," one man said. "What's left is fragile. Don't wander too close to the ruins." As I walked along the shoreline, I understood what he meant. Old Bluffton once sat on dry land, but when the dam was built, the water slowly swallowed the town. People were forced to leave their homes behind, knowing they would never return. I could still see parts of the old buildings rising from the ground, like broken memories refusing to disappear. The remains of walls stood near the water, their edges worn smooth by years of flooding.
Standing there, I imagined families packing their belongings, locking doors for the last time, and walking away while the water crept closer every year. That thought stayed heady in my chest. I walked slowly, watching the surface of the lake. Locals say the water level changes often, and sometimes more ruins appear when the water drops. That unpredictability is what makes this place dangerous. The ground is unstable, and stepping too close can be risky. There are no fences, no signs, just quiet warnings passed from one person to another. What struck me most was how peaceful Old Bluffton looked, despite its tragic past. The sunset reflected off the water, making everything glow softly. It was hard to believe that beneath that calm surface were streets, homes, and lives that had once been full of noise and movement. That contrast made the experience emotional in a way I didn't expect. As I stood there, I felt respect rather than fear. Old Bluffton isn't abandoned because people failed. It's abandoned because progress demanded sacrifice. When I finally turned away, I carried a deep sadness with me. Some places aren't empty. They're simply resting beneath the surface, holding stories that will never be told out loud. Reaching Ben Ficklin, Texas, felt like arriving at a place that history had quietly erased. The road leading to it was rough and empty, and as I stepped out of my car, the dry wind hit my face like a reminder of how unforgiving this land can be. There was almost nothing left standing, yet the ground itself felt heavy with memories. Before I came, locals had warned me not to expect buildings or clear streets. It's mostly ruins now, they said, but don't underestimate the place. Ben Ficklin was once a military and supply town, important for communication and trade. Walking across the open land, I imagined wagons rolling in, soldiers resting, and families trying to build a normal life in a harsh environment. That effort is what made this place real to me. I moved slowly, watching my steps. The remains of foundations were scattered across the ground, barely visible under dirt and grass. It was easy to miss them, and that's why locals warn visitors to be careful. Uneven ground and hidden debris make it easy to stumble. This wasn't a place meant for exploration anymore, but rather quiet reflection. Standing there, I felt a deep sense of loss. Ben Ficklin didn't fall apart because people abandoned it willingly. Floods and changing routes slowly took its importance away, forcing people to leave. The town didn't die suddenly, it faded, one family at a time. That slow disappearance made it more emotional than dramatic. As the sun moved lower, the land changed color, turning warm and soft. I closed my eyes for a moment and tried to picture the town at its peak. The sounds of voices, horses, and daily life felt almost close enough to touch. Opening my eyes again, all that remained was silence and wind. When I finally walked away, I felt humbled. Ben Ficklin wasn't empty land to me anymore. It was proof that even important places can disappear if nature and circumstances turn against them. The experience stayed with me long after I left, reminding me that history doesn't always leave behind walls. Sometimes it leaves behind feelings. 10 Best Texas. Driving toward Best Texas felt like following a road that had slowly forgotten where it once led. The town appeared suddenly, almost hiding in the open desert, with only a few structures standing against the wide sky. As I stepped out of the car, the silence was so complete that I could hear my own footsteps crunching on the gravel. It didn't feel scary, just empty, in a way that made you stop and think. Before coming here, I had spoken to a local who grew up nearby. He told me, Best was never meant to last forever. It was built for the oil, and when the oil slowed down, the town faded. Walking through the area, his words made perfect sense. Best was created to support oil workers, and when drilling activity declined, families packed up and left. What remained was a town without a reason to stay alive. I walked past the remains of old buildings, their walls worn down by wind and sun. Some had collapsed completely, leaving behind only outlines in the dirt. I imagined workers returning home after long shifts, tired but hopeful, believing the boom would continue. That hope once filled these streets, and its absence now filled the air with quiet sadness. The ground felt uneven under my feet, and I understood why locals warn people not to explore too freely. Hidden debris and unstable structures are still scattered across the land. There are no barriers or signs here, just the understanding that this place has been left to nature. Every step reminded me that time doesn't just erase towns, it weakens them slowly, piece by piece. As the sun dipped lower, Best looked almost peaceful. The sky turned soft shades of orange and blue, and for a moment, the town felt calm rather than abandoned. Standing there, I felt respect for the people who once lived and worked here, trying to build a future in a place that depended on something temporary. When I finally turned back, I felt changed. Best, Texas wasn't just another abandoned town on a map. It was a lesson in how fragile opportunity can be, and how quickly life can move on when the reason for staying disappears. That quiet realization stayed with me long after I left. As I walked away from these abandoned places, one thought stayed with me. These towns are not just empty land or broken buildings. They are silent reminders of real people who once lived, worked, and hoped there. Nature, time, and change slowly took everything away, but the stories still remain. Visiting these places teaches us how fragile life can be, and why locals warn us to respect what's left behind rather than forget it.